But how you doing, everybody? Hello, hello. Welcome to Fenway Faithful. I'm not alone tonight. We got a special friend, Lance. How we doing, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you for coming on. How's everything going, man? How's everything going this off season for you? What are you thinking about this off season so far?
I think it's going to be a pretty electric offseason overall. I'm very excited to see where certain guys go. I think Soto's the big domino that has to fall probably before a lot of the other boards clients end up in various places. But I think that's got to happen within the next couple weeks. Like, I don't know. Is that a pre-winter meetings thing? What do you think?
Yeah, based off of what we're hearing, it feels like winter meetings, and that was kind of something I was thinking coming into the off season because you know the money he's going to get, right? I mean, it's pretty point blank with him. I would say I don't think you have to do much of a dance. Yeah, you have a few teams in there. Break some bread, talk some numbers. I don't for him. Yes, future Hall of Famer, at least in my books, but I don't think it's really a complex case. I think there's a lot of money, and whoever gets the most, I think ends up getting him. We'll see how that ends up going, but we'll talk more about Juan Soto tonight, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It is greatly appreciated. But Lance, before we dive in, kind of tell everyone at
Yeah,
home,
yeah.
who are you? What do you do? You've been popping up a lot. You went on Foul Territory not too long ago. You've been popping up in other places on Twitter and whatnot. Who the heck are you?
Yeah, so I'm currently a player development analyst for Marquee Sports Network, which is the
Yes.
Chicago Coast Regional. So anyone's a Red Sox fan, that's Nesson, but out here in Chicago in the Midwest.
Yes.
I also have my own Substack, which I do, and a YouTube channel as well, primarily just pumping out baseball stuff. I'm a huge baseball fan. I definitely come at it from more of like the nerd data angle, but I try to make it as digestible as possible. I'm always trying to be open and get people more involved with the numbers and stuff and make them respect it. So that's always the goal whenever I hop on something like this.
Yeah, that's kind of the way, honestly, the way you just said it, that's sort of what I strive for. But you are way more intelligent than I am. So you're way better at this than me.
No,
So this is
get out
why
of
I'm
here.
happy to have you on. I do as much as I can to share the information, but everyone knows my potato brain gets the best of me a lot. But yeah, it's been a fun ride over the last few years, talking about all this stuff and just learning more over time. I've even asked you a couple of questions, through the DMs and whatnot. And, you've been a great resource. And, thank you for all you do. It's great to have people like you out there. And yeah, so it's been cool. But everyone, let's get into this, shall we? Listen, we got to talk a little Juan Soto here, a little Juan Soto. And we did get a little update here from John Heyman tonight saying that they are a very strong contender for Juan Soto. We've kind of known this for a little bit, but the fact that we keep seeing this, being pushed out there, I feel like you're starting to see, in the beginning, I don't know if you noticed this, Lance, when the Red Sox popped up as a contender for Soto, people immediately were like, oh, what are they going to offer? They're going to offer him, a Dunkin' Donuts gift card, based off of the spending the last few off seasons. And, but no, it looks like based off of what we've been hearing in the reports, from agents and whatnot, the Red Sox seem dead serious this offseason. And it doesn't seem like it's a show. The more we keep hearing about it, the more interesting it gets. And then John Heyman coming out tonight saying that they they are a pretty serious contender here. They should be right there in the end. He's been saying that in his article tonight, saying that, they're pushing the history of the Red Sox, how good of a fit he'll be at Fenway Park, how they're emphasizing left-handed hitters in Red Sox history. I think, the one thing you keep hearing about, obviously, with Fenway, good fits. You hear a lot about the right-handed bats, right? Like Teoscar Hernandez, for example. He's, been a popular free agent target. But if you think about all the greats, a lot of the greats in Red Sox history, you think of the lefties, right? Ted Williams, David Ortiz, Corey Yastrzemski, right? Even Mo Vaughn was very good, right? There's a lot of lefty hitters. Juan Soto, who knows, could end up being the next great lefty bat for the Red Sox. What are your thoughts overall on Soto as a fit, for the Red Sox? What do you think of their chances? What do you think about this whole thing?
But to me, I think I draw some parallels to the Otani situation in Chicago a couple of years ago when like there was a lot of thought that he might be involved in some Cub market, etc. But
Yeah.
it never really got to the point where you got some weird conspiracy thing going on with the Blue Jays where he was supposedly flying there, or whether they actually made an offer. So to me,
Yeah.
honestly, like looking back at it now, I don't even actually know whether the Cubs were seriously in on him or whether they just like leaked something to be kind of in on him. But
Yeah.
it's different with this Soto situation in the Red Sox, where they actually seem like they're involved in it. They've popped up in contenders in terms of people trying to isolate off a couple teams that have actually supposedly extended offers already, although that hasn't really been picked up by the Passons and the Rosenthals or the Nightingales and such. So I'm not entirely sure how true that is. But I think they're a contender. I still think this probably goes through New York, right? I think
Yeah.
if I had to predict, or you maybe put money on it right now, I think he's a Met. And if you're probably handicapping it, I think you guys are pretty close to the Yankees. But one of the things that I've been a little more skeptical the Yankees have a realistic shot. Aside, they obviously have a monetary shot, but the
Mhm.
fit side of the Yankees and Soto, I don't think makes as much sense, particularly because that team got to the World Series with pretty terrible, or entering now a season where they're going to have pretty terrible first and third base play.
Yeah.
Like you have, what is it? Is it Ben Rice and Oswaldo Cabrera, I guess?
Yeah.
Like,
DJ
and you're
LeMahieu
gonna
in
go
the
out and pay
mix.
Soto.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're gonna go pay Soto this much money and have those two massive holes on your team. Like, I
Yeah.
actually think it makes much more sense for the Yankees to like diversify that Soto money into Bregman. I pick up a scoop of first baseman, whoever. You don't have to go after a big shot, and then pick up a pitcher or something along those lines. I actually think that team would look better from a pure like bulletproofness standpoint. The Red Sox are in a spot though where they have like a ton of tax space, right? They have just about
Yeah.
$100 million from what I see on Spotrac right now, but
Yeah.
I think they can fit him in, and I think it makes a lot of sense. If I had to guess, he's a Met, but I think this team is probably top three in the handicapping of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring up the Yankees. I am someone, I know a lot of Red Sox fans here in the chat and everyone in the chat. Thank you for stopping by. But I am one where, funny enough, my best friend is actually a Yankee fan. I don't know if that's going to hurt my reputation or not. But I've always had a respect for the Yankees, right? But listen, coming into the offseason, I predicted Juan Soto would go back to the Yankees. But then, like, immediately after I posted it, I'm like, I woke up the next morning. I'm like, gosh, yeah, I think the Mets actually might be a better fit, because I started thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, that farm system too with the Yankees, it's not, I wouldn't say terrible, but they need to kind of replenish it a little bit more to get it, back up into the rankings. I believe they ranked 19th overall on the latest Baseball America rankings. I think that was mid-season. I'm not sure what it's at right now. But when you take a look at the Red Sox and the Mets, I mean, they're both in the top 10 in those rankings. So the Yankees, they have a little bit to make up there. But like you said, they don't have any immediate options. Yeah, they got, Jason Dominguez, who I'd imagine is going to get an opportunity out there if Juan Soto ends up going. But like you said, you don't, have a lot of bona fide options right now. Sure, Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza, Ben Rice, but like you said, right? I mean, they already got so much money on the payroll as it is. Yes, they're the Yankees, but I mean, they are a team that is cautious of, not being ridiculous with the money. I think you have to put the Mets ahead of the Yankees at this point. But when you think about the Red Sox, the one thing you think about when you take a look at all the boxes that get checked off, and I'm not trying to sound like Giraffe Neck Robbie here, biased Red Sox fan, but by the way, that's out of respect. I love Mark. I love Giraffe Neck
Yeah, no,
Robbie.
I got that too. It's a good reference.
Yeah, no, that's a respect thing, by the way. Not a jab, but really the only negative that you can think of with the Red Sox in this whole thing is whether or not they will put down enough money, because they've had this stigma attached to them over the last few years where they've been cautious of spending the money and going over the tax, but then you look at it from the point of view where they've been rebuilding this farm a little bit. John Henry has always operated on, he'll be aggressive when the farm system is good, when they have a core in place at the major league level. It makes so much sense for the Red Sox to do it. It's just a matter of, will they put forth an aggressive enough offer? We've seen the Red Sox over the years. David Price, I think they beat the Cardinals out by $40 million or whatever it was. Daisuke Matsuzaka, I know you love, breaking down the pictures and whatnot. I don't know if you ever dove too much into Daisuke, but that was a guy, they beat the Yankees out by like $20 million on the posting fee. They have shown to be aggressive in the past. But I'm with you right there. The Mets, I think you have to give them the nod to be the favorite. I will ask you though, do you think I guess the supposed dinner that Juan Soto just had with the Mets. Do you think going to Steve Cohen's mansion, he was probably wearing his silk pajamas while they were eating some kind of expensive dish? What do you think about that? We saw that come out today.
I feel like that's one of those things where if it actually ends up, if he actually ends up going there, then we're gonna get like so many more details about how that dinner swayed things, right? Where it was like, oh, he got it catered by this like incredible restaurant, and I don't know. I think that stuff's so funny to me. I just
It
like
is.
I guess I don't glom onto it as much as most people, but I get how it pops in like post headlines and
Yeah.
other places such that you can then troll as much as possible. But
Yeah.
I
What do you
I
think
don't
of
know how
the
much that stuff has an influence, man. Money has an influence, right? That's the biggest influence to any of these guys. And
yeah.
I don't blame them.
Yeah. It's funny because I saw that today, but then I thought back to last year. I'm like, didn't Yamamoto go to his house and like have dinner? Like, didn't Cohen go to Japan and
Yeah.
eat
How
with
did
the
that work
guy?
out?
Like, who knows? Who knows what will happen? What do you think of the announcement from Soto today, announcing that he's joining Celsius? I thought that was really good. What do you think?
I thought it was kind of clever. I was a little bit cheesy too. Weren't they branded all over the Mike Tyson fight too? I remember seeing that all over the ring and stuff. So they are spending some marketing dollars right now. They might be able to afford Juan Soto's contract
I
based on
mean,
the amount
honestly,
of marketing dollars they're spending to try to get me to drink whatever Celsius is. I don't
yeah,
think I've ever had a Celsius. Are they good? What
they're
is it?
okay. They're okay. It's
They're
just
okay. That's
whatever.
what I thought. Yeah,
They
that's not
tend to be
surprising.
they're a little cheaper. Like for me, if I'm running to the gym, I need a little pick me up. They are cheaper than the other pre workout drinks out there, so
Okay.
it gets the job done.
It
It's
looks
okay.
healthier, right? It's a little like it's not
Yeah,
Monster where it looks gonna like rip my face off. It's
yeah.
like
I'm not like a
white
total
and
health freak.
classy.
Honestly, with me, I'm not a health freak. Literally a post workout meal for me, I'll have some ice cream and like a candy bar. Whatever. I
That's
don't
good. That's how you bulk, man. Come on.
care. It is bulking season. But yeah,
It is.
with Juan Soto, there was one more thing on the Celsius thing today, where it's so funny. I don't know if you've noticed this too. People dive so much, they look for clues on everything. People were looking at the color of the
Sure.
microphones, and so there was a red microphone. And Red Sox fans were like, "Oh, there's a red microphone! Oh my goodness! Look, there's a blue and a yellow one for the the City Connect jerseys or whatever." I don't know. It's interesting. We'll see if there ends up being a plane involved this year. But as for Soto, the fit with, what do you think about Soto and the bat at Fenway Park? Do you think that could end up leading to, some consistent like 10 F4 kind of seasons? When you think of that bat with all the nooks and crannies and the monster, does that get you jazzed up just thinking about that?
It is interesting. Yeah, I remember. So I did some stuff for, unfortunately, ESPN Network. I know, boo. But last year when Soto was there, and I was like, I think that he's going to start pulling the ball a lot because the return on just laying into a little more pull side pop at that stadium is so massive to me. And everyone's like, no, he's not going to stray out of his approach. He's not going to stray out of his approach. And then I'm pretty sure his pull rate like jumped up 10
Oh,
percentage
it
points.
did. It
So when
did.
you go to
Yeah.
Fenway, right? Exactly. Yeah, he started pulling the ball. It's like
He's
if
that
you're really in a
good.
situation where you could hit 40 plus pumps.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need him going the other way. But now it's interesting because at Fenway, you have like a large right field, right? So the park factor there from like a runs created standpoint is high. I think I just popped it up. It's the number 2 park for left-handed hitters over the last 3 seasons next to Coors Field. But for pure home run side power, it's middle of the pack. I think it's like right around average. So, I mean, everyone who watches and knows Fenway Park knows this. But I wonder from an approach standpoint what maybe he does differently, especially if you go Oppo as a lefty. You get this a little bit in Wrigley too. I know I'm bringing up the Cubs here, but they have like a shallow left center. So you see like Bellinger and some of these other lefties kind of go Oppo and get balls out.
Yeah.
I wonder whether Soto kind of maybe reverts back to what he was doing in 22, 23, where it's not, say, 45 plus homers, whatever. It's more in like a reasonable, say, 35, 40. But
Yeah.
then you get the slug up on doubles and you get pure OBP up, because I just think he's an unbelievable hitter. He can make those adjustments. He's still increasing to his prime. We generally see increases in things like WRC plus until the guy hits about 28. So I think it's a really good situation. Like if you're going to go to another park that isn't Yankee Stadium, then I think you're not going to the Colorado, which is number 1. Number 3 is Great American. He's not going to the Reds. He's not going to the Pirates, which is number 4. There's no one on this list in the top 10 from a pure Park factor standpoint for lefties that makes as much sense as the Red Sox. So if he wants to go, I'm not going to say pad stats, but have very nice stats and also get a bag, then Fenway and the Red Sox make a lot of sense.
Yeah, when you take a look at his career at just going just dead center, I wonder if he ends up just just going that approach, right? Just really, like you said, just kind of a balanced approach. Kind of. I remember back with Adrian Gonzalez, years ago, everyone was all about how he was just such an oppo hitter and he would use the monster and whatnot. I think you could see Soto, get that into play. I think you could see a little bit of Adrian Gonzalez there a little bit. I think it would be really fun, man.
I buy that.
I know I'm dreaming here. My Red Sox bias is kicking in, but I think he would just be a great fit there. It would be really fun to see what he could do over half a season at Fenway Park. But moving on from Juan Soto. I know everyone at home, they're looking up rumors anywhere they can, but we got to move on from Soto at some point. I'll be honest with you. I actually, today, I get when I see anything pop up, whether it's from one of the Latin reporters or Heyman or whoever, I get like this adrenaline rush. And today I felt like I was getting sucked into the whole thing. And I'm like, my face is hurting. I need to put my phone down. Like I had to get away from it, but I didn't want to be too far from it too, because I got the main channel where if something happens, I gotta go live for it. So anyway, let's get away from Juan Soto. But listen, you are very big when it comes to the pitching side of things. You're big in all of this, but you seem to be very into the pitching side of things. One guy that's been on the radar for the Red Sox is actually on the trade market, Garrett Crochet. When it comes to Garrett Crochet, had a big breakout year with the White Sox this year, first year in the rotation. My goodness, this guy was just on a complete roll in the first half. You did see a little bit of a dip in the second half with the numbers, which I think is understandable. A guy coming off of Tommy John, he's already set a career high in innings. I could see a little fatigue probably coming into play at times. With Garrett Crochet, what do you think of? Well, before I get to that, actually, there was a update.
Sure.
From Sean McAdam, just for the people at home, that it looks like maybe the Red Sox are getting a little quiet on Crochet. And we saw this yesterday, right? There was a report out there the Phillies could be jumping into it. I guess today there was a mystery team possibly getting involved. Who knows who that could be? Maybe the Dodgers, whoever. But it looks like the Red Sox might be pulling away a little bit. We'll get to the other pitchers on the market. That ties in, I think, a little bit too. But with Garrett Crochet, let's say the Red Sox are still involved. What do you think about the fit of Crochet in the rotation there? Obviously, age, timeline-wise, I think that's a good fit too. But from a stats point of view, from an analytical point of view, what do you think about that fit?
I like him. I think he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, and I just think he does a lot of things really well. And I think anytime you have a shot to get, say, somebody projected as like a top 3 pitcher heading into next year, top 4-ish, like you gotta get him. I think there's only a couple teams really in baseball that make a lot of sense from a what package can you put together standpoint to actually get Crochet back. I think the Red Sox make sense, although they're pulling back. The Cubs and the Orioles are 2 others based on just the pure amount of position prospects that they have available.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you could say the Phillies too, although like what's been floated in terms of Bohm and Justin Crawford doesn't particularly make me too confident. If that's what gets Crochet, then like there should have been another 5 teams in on him, because there could have been another team that didn't have the position prospect depth of a Red Sox or the Cubs to go get him. I think he's a really good pitcher. I think he's made some really sharp adjustments. They really throttled his innings. They did it confidently. The Brian Bannister took over on the pitching department, and a lot of what they're doing philosophically has done, I think, an unbelievable job. Very modern in terms of how they're stretching guys, where they're not shutting down. And he's been quoted. I believe James Fegan had this, where the biggest problem for pitchers is like this ramp up period. It's coming out of spring training. This is why you have a bunch of injuries right in April and May. If you look at like Tommy John graphs on a yearly basis, it peaks usually beginning of the season and right after the All-Star break, which are the 2 periods of time where guys shut down and ramp back up. So what they decided to do was like stretch him, where it's like, we're not going to shut you down in July just because you hit your innings cap and you were absolutely dominating. He was pacing for like 230 innings or something like that early in the year. He's such a good pitcher. And he also made some adjustments that I love. Like he was throwing a sweeper early in the year. He started getting that beat up by righties. So he flipped to more of like a pure slider cutter thing, nailed that thing down in. Command on it was exceptional. Late in the year, he decided to start throwing a sinker, and he's throwing it to righties too, but that's also just a lefty killer for him. I just think a lot of the time on the data side, you look at like steamer projections or any other projection if you're trying to project a guy out. And a lot of the times, what they're doing is taking some average of the last couple of years and looking at underlying statistics. And the big way to try to come to some advantage on those things or see where there's value is to assume that a change a guy made in a prior year will stick or have some larger impact on their results going forward. And a guy like Crochet, I think it's tough to go, let me just take exactly what he did and project it out and he'll be that. Like, I think there's a chance he could be better than like the 293 projection that I see over 170 innings on Steamer right now. Like,
Yeah.
if he posts like a 2.7 over 180, 190, I wouldn't be absolutely stunned. And man, I would give up a ton for that if I was basically any organization in baseball that had a chance to get into the playoffs. You're already through 146, like that guy's sharp in terms of workload. I just love it. And again, going back like a little bit, touching back on the Soto thing here. I know we're on Crochet, but
Yeah.
the way you start to differentiate as an organization, I think, and we've seen this as opposed to other sports where if you spend a lot of money, it doesn't often correlate directly to wins. But because of the luxury tax, when you have good player development base, you see this with a lot of organizations. I think the Red Sox are getting to that point through and through based on their prospect list and also a lot of the acquisitions they've made on the staff side. When developmental base and then you're willing to then spend on top of it, this is in relation to a Soto, but also potentially spend and convert some prospects into a Crochet and then maybe even extend a Crochet. That's how you become like a perennial contender. That's what teams like they have a very good foundation in terms of player development, and they stack it on by actually being willing to pay guys and pay guys who have upside because they know they can backfill. They don't need to grab like the $17 million a year Nathan Givaldi, who is fine, but like they don't need him. Like they have a guy that could come up and produce 70% of what Givaldi's going to do. They'll take a shot on my glass now. He's only going to give him 140 innings.
Yeah. Yeah. And no,
If you're concerned about the health on Crochet, you get him to 130, 150 innings. It's like exceptional.
oh yeah. I mean, obviously the numbers are there. With Crochet. Before I touch on some of the other numbers here, I mentioned earlier just timeline, right? When you take a look at the history, especially in the John Henry era, you take a look at the guys that ended up being top of the rotation aces for you that helped carry you to a championship. Josh Beckett back in 2007. You traded one of the top prospects in baseball at the time in Hanley Ramirez for him. Go back to Chris Sale not too long ago, right? Also a Chicago White Sox, right? So Garrett Crochet kind of fits that mold a little bit. So it would be interesting if he ended up being that next guy in line that the Red Sox could make a move for. But getting back to the numbers here, looking at StatCast, right? You're seeing the four seam fastball. I mean, had a massive run value on it, a 15 run value. I mean, that is just excellent, right? He threw a ton of four seam fastballs this year. 1,287 four seam fastballs. That is right around 54% of the time. Now, I've seen you even tweet about this. I think you've even talked about it in one of your videos. Also, everyone, go subscribe to Lance, by the way. But the one thing the Red Sox did this year was they got away from four-seam fastballs. That was like a huge drop-off, and they were like dead last by, I think, a country mile in four-seam fastball usage, right? That was a big thing they went to. They were leaning on strengths, Now, with Garrett Crochet, do you think, let's say they bring him in, do you think that they would take that same approach, or do you think they just say, hey, you got a really good fastball, we stick to the strengths, that's what you need to go with? What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I was definitely on like the Red Sox are killing the fastball bandwagon. And I actually had some conversations this offseason with people inside the Red Sox organization about this because I just found it fascinating. And I think I found it fascinating from the perspective that in the minor leagues specifically, they cut like over 10 percentage points of four seam fastball usage specifically, which to me is honestly more impressive than what they did at the major league level. Because I think oftentimes what happens is when you bring over a Breslow and a Bailey, et cetera, those guys can have really good impact on the major league team. But
Mhm.
sometimes there's disconnect in organizations between what's happening on the minor league side and what's happening on the major league side. So you could get things done pretty quickly on the major league side. I often think it's a lot harder to be like, we're bringing over this new staff and we're making all these wholesale changes throughout the organization. But the Red Sox did that really well. I think the thing that I learned that probably stuck with me the most is that it's not maybe necessarily that they hate the four seam fastball. I think they generally think two things are true. The first being that a lot of guys can generally locate non-forcing fastballs close to or as well as forcing fastballs. And therefore, if the forcing fastball is giving up more damage, then we would just go to the other pitches, sacrifice very marginal zone rate, and lean on the pitches that aren't going to allow as much damage. And this is what you're seeing, I think, generally. But there's also the point of like they like good four seam fastballs. You saw us like Nick Pivetta. That's a good four seam fastball. They didn't really cut his usage, I think, at all versus either hand in this year over year. I think that stayed around with like 55% or so. Let's say that. So that's kind of what I think of is like it's not totally that they hate four seam fastballs. I think they hate bad four seam fastballs and believe that guys don't need to throw it in order to get ahead in the count. So they'll lean on other things. So going to your point, Crochet, will they cut his four seam fastball usage? My answer probably leans toward no. I think they maybe cut it slightly. Maybe it drops to like 45%, 50%. It was around 53 last year. Maybe they bring in this new sinker more. Maybe they throw the cutter more, etc. But I think it's good enough from a velo, etc. perspective, stuff perspective, even if it's not plus plus, that it performs so well that they're not just going to throw that completely out. That's a good enough fastball to survive. I'd say off topic here, but the guy I'm more curious about is like a Lucas Giolito, where his four seam fastball is good, but it's not like exceptionally good. It's not as good as Pavetta's. It was okay in the past. Like, I wonder what they're going to do with him in particular.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing because, with Lucas Giolito, obviously we didn't get to see, the way they handled things with pitchers this year with him, obviously, because he was out for the whole year. But, going back to the Lucas Giolito signing, we didn't know about all how they were planning to approach the four seam usage, leaning towards the strengths, going with other pitches. So, in hindsight, you look back to the Lucas Giolito signing and you think, oh, wow, maybe that could have actually ended up being a lot better than what people think. Hold on, everyone. We're going to get him back in here. Let's get him in. And hold on one second. And there we go. We're good to go. Can you hear me, my friend?
Yeah, I got you. Got me?
Wait, hold on. Let me get you in one more time. I cannot hear you, my friend. Call back. Try to get back in if you can. But he'll be right back here, everyone. Just having a couple technical... Oh, there he is, right there. And let's put him back in. Hold on one second, everybody. There we go. Are we good? I think we're good.
How about now?
I think we're good. All right, we're good. Sorry about that. Hold on one second. All right, we're good now. We're good. Sorry. Wi-Fi. You got to love the Wi-Fi. But, Lucas Giolito, right? I know. But Lucas Giolito, looking back on that signing, I think that would have been really interesting to see what he would have ended up doing this year. And, because this was a guy that had his issues a couple of years ago before he went down. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I feel like he's a bit of a forgotten man a little bit. Everyone's focusing on, the great year Tanner Houck had, Brian Bayo, Carter Crawford, and they're looking at obviously the free agents with Burnes, Fried, and Snell. And I think Giolito, I feel like he could be a guy that actually ends up doing a lot. He's been a workhorse in his career. I'm actually, that's another question I just popped into my head here. But, what do you think here, with the UCL surgery, a lot of these guys are getting that internal brace surgery. Giolito has always been an innings eater in his career. How do you think maybe the Red Sox could approach, that when it comes to the innings, right? How do you think his workload could end up being? Or how do you think they can end up handling it?
Good point. I mean, I don't think we see too many guys pop over, say, like 100-ish, 120 max innings post TJ, specifically based on probably that date they got it. Another guy I was looking at in relation to this is Shane Bieber, who's, I think, commanding like a very interesting market because his contract's probably going to be pretty incentive laden. But similar situation, like I think he's projected for around 100 innings, and I can't imagine he pushes too massively beyond that. But I'm curious to see again what they do with the fastball there because it's like fine, but I think there's some room to maybe add in a cutter and throw in another breaking ball in there as opposed to just having the one slider that he was throwing a lot because he had some regression against lefties overall and just he wasn't as strong as he had been in prior years. So I think you're going to see a different Giolito in terms of what exactly he's throwing with the Red Sox.
Yeah, and that was if you think back to that offseason, they kind of you weren't really hearing a lot about him, and all of a sudden, the Red Sox just kind of jumped all over him. You go back to his 2023 season, the four-seamer had a -8 run value. The slider was at a -8. The changeup was okay. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see. But let's kind of get into the other guys here that the Red Sox have on their radar. We got reports not too long ago that the Red Sox have been showing some interest in Fried. They, talking with Snell. And then all of a sudden, we got a report yesterday. Everyone in Red Sox land was going crazy about this. That the Red Sox are not only just looking at one of these guys, but maybe even going for two of them. What was your instant reaction just like seeing that the Red Sox, yes, they're involved in Juan Soto, but could you honestly see the Red Sox landing two of these guys? Let's say Burnes and then one of the lefties in Fried or Snell.
I'm going to say no, just because I think starting pitching is so important in this individual market that I wonder whether if the Red Sox go after one of those guys,
Yeah.
you force whatever team was looking at that guy to then become competitors in the other two, such that that then drives up the floor of whatever the value is. And a lot of these agents are gonna, you're gonna wait for probably the top dog to go before the others go. So Burnes, I imagine, would probably go first in this case. So then you get free reign on Burnes. All these teams going after Burnes. One of the teams is gonna get him, and then the other say 3 to 4 that were in that final. They're probably gonna then pivot to a Fried or a Snell. And maybe they don't pivot directly to those. Maybe they just don't like them organizationally as a fit, or like they don't project them as kindly, et cetera. So maybe they go dip down into like the Eovaldi, Flaherty tier of pitching. But I don't think they're going to get two. I think it's a cool concept. Maybe they just really like the value of these particular pitchers and are looking forward at other free agent classes and going, don't necessarily know if it's going to line up as well. Let's just go after these two. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like that, crazy if you're like, yeah, we'll get Burnes, Snell, and Juan Soto. Like that seems like an absolute pipe dream to me. Like
Yeah.
Soto alone is a pipe dream, but like two starters on top of that's a pipe dream. So is this an
Yeah.
alternative to Soto? Like I'm trying to figure that out from a non-Red Sox fan standpoint.
Yeah, I think we got to pump the brakes on that. Adding all of these guys. If they got Soto, I could maybe see one of Fried or Snell, but then I could also just see them maybe even just going after someone like Sean Manaea or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but let's kind of get into these three pictures here, right? Now I don't think you're going to add both Fried and Snell. I think one of them would be a good option. If you're looking at one of the lefties, the Red Sox, I know a lot of people out there say, oh, you don't need a lefty in the rotation. I'm old school. I like having a lefty in the rotation. That's just how I am. It mixes things up. I don't know. I like it. Maybe I'm also biased because I like the John Lesters that we had in the past. So I'm a lefty fan. What can I say? But if you were to take a pick, because this has been debated in Red Sox land, Snell or Fried, right? Both come with different profiles, right? Snell, more of a stuff guy, gets a lot of swing and miss in the zone, something that Craig Breslow likes a lot. Good stuff, good velocity. Only issue with Snell is he's ran into some injuries over the last few years. There seems to be just always something with him, whether that's injuries or high walk rates or signing late into spring training last year, had the terrible first half, had a couple injuries along the way. But you're going to get the good stuff with him. He's also pitched in the AL East before, so that has the experience factor. You also don't have the draft pick that you would have to give up because he wasn't qualified he wasn't eligible for the qualifying offer. And then on the other hand, you got someone like Max Fried, who's been a pretty steady guy for the most part, outside of a couple arm issues that he was having back in 23, helped win a World Series in 2021. But he's not really going to have the stuff necessarily as a Blake Snell, more of a pitch to contact kind of a guy, a little younger than Blake Snell. But in the end, very different profiles, but both have been very successful in their career. If you were to lean one way from all the analytical work that you've done, all the research you've done, who do you think out of those two would be the better fit for the Red Sox?
I'm gonna go Snell. I think it's pretty clear too, and I'll go for two reasons. Number one, he just misses more bats generally, and that's always something on the data set we're going to be able to project out a little more confidently, as opposed to someone who relies more on contact. And I get Fried has done it for long enough now, where we could probably believe that weird cut fastball he throws has some effect on what we're nailing here. But there's also the angle of like Fried in 2023, I believe, had a 60-day IL stint with a flexure injury, and then last year had whatever seemed like some neuritis thing. I'm not entirely sure what that is. A
Right.
lot of flexors are precursors for Tommy John. So if
Yeah.
you're giving him a multi-year deal, I think to some extent you're baking that in. That's not to say that his risk is like materially different than a Blake Snell going down with a comparable injury or something along those lines. Like pitchers get hurt, it just kind of happens. But I think you have to put it slightly above Snell at least. And I think that alone, and on top of the fact that Snell, I think, is just a fascinating pitcher because he just refuses to throw like crappy pitches behind in the count, which is,
Mhm.
it's just, he's a very modern pitcher. I think he would line up very well with what the Red Sox want to do from like a don't throw bad pitches in zone standpoint. Like he's very sharp with that. And I love the fact that like last couple of seasons he seems to be able to pick up one of his curveball, slider, change. He plays around the usage of these things, and it's like he's had stints over months or 2 months where one of those pitches just becomes like dominant. And
Yeah.
I always wonder whether there's just a time where all of them get locked in and he turns back into Cy Young Snell, which he's done already 2 times. So it's like
Yeah.
that is in the tank. Like we haven't seen Freed do that. We haven't seen Freed, I'm not a year and a half from 2 years removed from him getting like an internal brace surgery where I'm a little more confident he's going to have an intact UCL for an extended period of time. Like I'm a little worried on the Freed health side, and I imagine other teams are as well. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to go Freed for strikeouts and health.
Yeah, no, and it's funny with Snell because there was like one little report last offseason that the Red Sox had met with Snell. I don't know, it was like this weird Reddit post from like a guy where he's like, "Oh, I know someone that knows Snell. I think he's gonna sign there." From what I was told, and I was like, "What?" And it's just funny that you're seeing the connection again. I remember there was a picture last offseason that like someone took a picture of the big screen at Fenway and like it was like Fortnite on the screen or something, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, Blake Snell loves Fortnite. Is he about to sign?" I don't know. It's just interesting thinking about that. But no, I
You guys
definitely
are
see
really
the
the weeds
connection.
in Boston, man.
Yeah, yeah, no, but it's also funny with Snell too. Well, not funny, but another thing to think about too with Snell is he kind of fits into kind of the contracts that John Henry seems to prefer when it comes to pitchers. John Henry historically, kind of like Artie Moreno, he doesn't really like signing up for the long-term deals for the pitchers. He has done it. He did it with David Price, which was kind of a reactionary move to John Lester leaving town. But really, when you think about pitchers that they've locked up, not a lot of long-term ones, right? They did John Lackey way back then. Not a lot of them, right? You've done a couple of 2-year,
Mm.
3-year deals along the way. Snell kind of fits into that mold, where he's probably going to get, I would say, nothing more than a 5-year deal. I believe he's just about to turn 33, or is he 32? I can't remember the age exactly, but it kind of fits into that 4 or 5-year range for a contract. High AAV, you're probably looking at around, I would probably say anywhere 28, 30 million per year. Where with Freed, he's a little younger, so he'd probably get 6-year deal, I would say. But with Snell, you don't have to give up the qualify or the draft pick because he didn't have the qualifying offer. So I think financially, when you think about the terms, I think Snell makes sense in a lot of different ways, right? Fits the profile. I would not be surprised at all with Blake Snell. I'll say this with Max Fried, though. I wonder with Max Fried because, I was taking a look at the Stuff Plus leaderboards not too long ago. And, you
Hmm.
take a look at the four-seamer with Max Fried. Not great, right? Not a lot of action going on with that. But when you take a look at his cutter and the sinker, they played a little bit better. The cutter he didn't use a lot this past year. It didn't perform very well, but it had good stuff on it. So that kind of makes me wonder if maybe the Red Sox see a picture where maybe they could get a little bit of a cheaper AAV. Maybe they could end up doing like a 5-year deal with some kind of an option or something like that, where maybe they could help Fried get to that next level a little bit. So, say, hey, your four-seamer, not all that great. It's okay, but we think your cutter, your sinker can play a little bit better. We feel like you can get to that next level if you come with us. What do you think of Fried, potentially kind of switching things up with the Red Sox if he were to go there?
Yeah, I think the weird thing about the free four seam is that this like cut fastball shape, like we were talking about it, or I don't know if we were talking about it. We didn't talk about Burnes too much, but he's got a very similar situation where he throws his primary pitch is a cutter, and it's actually tagged on Savant as a cutter. In Freed's circumstance, I would argue that's just a cutter, and in Justin Steele's circumstance, I would argue it's just a cutter. It's just that they call it a four seam fastball. So what happens from like a bucketing and grading standpoint is like I don't think Fangraphs Stuff Plus really cares what your primary pitch is, but there are some models that just like don't really know what to do with this kind of four seam because a lot of the time what we're looking at for four seams is like velocity and carry. And to get this cut shape, you're cutting the ball, so you lose carry and you pick up kind of glove side, and it's just like a weird pitch. And oftentimes what this results in is staying off barrel. And then you get into the whole debate of like, okay, is that sustainable versus one that generates swing miss? We know from a pure, like, what does this pitcher control more? We're probably more confident he can control swing miss than he can ball and play. So therefore, a lot of the time we're just skeptical. We just kind of throw our hands up on the modeling side and we're like, yeah, like the fastball is what it is. It gets results, but like, we'll see if that continues. And I think we're getting to the point where like some orgs are like, no, that's actually like a trait. That's a feature rather than like a bug. Like we like that. And the Cubs have been a team that kind of leaned into this pitch. They have like 4 or 5 pitchers on the major league roster that have this cut shape. None of them grade out well. They all have good results. And I think Fried is right in that bucket where I'd actually be curious to see how the Red Sox view that fastball specifically, whether they think it's kind of weird enough to work and whether they're fine with like the contact neutralizing qualities of it, or whether they try to just push him away from it a bit again and then maybe move towards other pitches they think are better. But it's a weird pitch. I just don't. A lot of the times, like you just think it's a fastball and you comp it to other fastballs, and it's like, nah, it's not. It's a very different kind of fastball, in my opinion. It's in this cut category that you have to like kind of remove all your prior biases about how fastballs work with.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to think about. And I think another factor that comes into play too is, yes, Fried is a ground ball guy, right? He's going to get a lot of contact. I think a lot of that comes down to whether or not the Red Sox can improve their infield defense. There has been a lot of talk as of late that Rafael Devers could possibly be moved off of third base. There's been talk of DH or maybe even first base. We'll have to dive into that a little bit later about a possible position change there. But I think a lot of that relies on whether or not they can improve the defense at third base. Rafi, the numbers just don't look great over the last few years. Showed some improvements in some areas last year. What do you think about that? Do you think the Red Sox would probably have to improve the left side of the infield there and even something like second base too?
Yeah. I think it's a similar situation that the Cubs are kind of running into almost to some extent, where it's like they have this Isak Paredes guy from the Rays, who you guys probably saw a pretty good amount in the AL East, and it's like he's at third, he's not that great of a defender, but they got him to play third. So, but now it's immediately because it's more even. It's one of those things, or even in terms of value, it's one of those things where you look at the roster and you go, where are we upgrading? It's like you're going to the spot that's more neutral in terms of performance and trying to upgrade there. So I think that's what's happening with the Red Sox, a very similar situation where like he's an incredible hitter. He's been an incredible hitter for 4 years. It's just because it's more neutral offensively, you go, okay, like, can he go to first and can Casas stay a little healthier, if he plays DH as opposed to first, etc. And then your natural upgrade becomes third base. And it's the thing that I was running into though is like third base is often a tough spot to upgrade. It's not like you run into free agent classes where there's like 5 third basemen and everyone's like, oh, great, I can't wait to solidify the left side of my infield, So I struggle with that. Like Adames becomes interesting, in my opinion, for the Red Sox. Like I'm not entirely sure if that's been speculated at all, but like I wouldn't be shocked if some teams are entertaining him at third. The Yankees, it makes some sense for to put Adames at third, with Volpe at short and stuff. Like that would make a lot of sense. So I think that teams should get creative in these situations. If you value a guy highly, like an Adames or someone along those lines, and your best fit for him is in another spot, and you think he could play there exceptionally well, then play around with it, and you get back, good defense at third base. Rafi hasn't been like the worst. I don't think he's been like the worst third base defender in baseball, right? He's probably bottom half, but he's not he's not absolute stone zero.
If you're looking at the rankings, actually, he is the worst.
he is at the bottom. Oh my god, I should have looked at.
No, it kind of surprised me too, because I figured there's got to be someone out there that is probably.
Yeah, I just assumed. I was looking at the Fangraphs defensive value here, and he's like minus 2.6, which I was like, okay, that can't be terrible, right? There's when you're looking at -5.
When you're looking at it from the qualified guy that had the qualified amount of innings, yes, he's there. But when you say like a minimum of like 100 innings, then there are some guys that go below. But when you're looking at the qualified third baseman, he was the worst last year, last 2 years, going back the last 3 years. But
not great. All right, you got to upgrade there.
Yeah, but there are people behind the scenes that they did see some good things with Rafi at third. For me personally, I know there's been a lot of talk of moving him off of there. It's more you've seen him make some good plays, but it's kind of the ones that you forget about, right? Routine, throw goes wide off to the left, right? Runner safe at first, maybe a little bobble here and there. It's the consistency with Rafi, and he tends to get dinged up in the second half over the last couple of years. So there are arguments to take him off, have him DH. It'll help the durability, and obviously you can improve the defense. Arenado has been a guy that's been brought up here in the last few days. Adames, they have a meeting scheduled with I don't know when that's going to be, but It's going to be interesting. But getting back to Fried, I do think they would have to improve the defense there. So I think when you take a look at it, when you're looking at all the boxes, checking off boxes, I think Snell would be the guy that probably makes the most sense. And if you can still add Adames after that, then yeah, I mean, hey, that's great too, right? But I think Fried, you would need to add someone like Adames at that point, or go get someone like Arenado. So
I agree.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how
Yeah,
it
it
all
makes a ton of
turns
sense.
out. But one more guy we'll talk about, and that's we touched on Snell, we touched on Fried, Corbin Burnes. Corbin Burnes here. I kind of in my head wrote him off. He's a guy that I've always wanted to have, come to the Red Sox. When you're looking at the last couple of years, maybe trades. Corbin Burnes, he checks off a lot of boxes. The only thing that I wonder about is just whether or not John Henry would sign off on a guy that probably ends up getting a 7 or 8 year deal. Corbin Burnes, obviously he would be great anywhere, but, does that spark your interest, of a guy that could maybe benefiting from this revamped pitching department with the Red Sox along with Andrew Bailey?
Yeah, I love Burnes. I think he's clearly the best pitcher in this class. I think some of the regression there has been slightly overblown from the standpoint of like, I get it's happening, but A, he was still really productive, and
Yeah.
B, I think people are downplaying the probability that he gets whatever was happening in 22 and 23 with the cutter that was better in 24 back.
Mm-hmm.
Like those things can happen, like we're looking at this thing probabilistically. There's a chance that cutter bounces back, and in which case you get him for multiple years and he's an exceptional player. So I really like him. I think he does a lot of things really well. I think he still has some tricks in his bag that he could go to as he ages.
Yeah.
Throw the sweeper more. He's thrown this like in weird spurts throughout his career over the last 2 years. He brought it out in the second half of 23 after struggling against right-handed hitters. Then he brought it back at the end of this season, and he's kind of like started each of the last 2 seasons without it. It would grade as like one of the best sweepers in baseball. It's nasty. He just doesn't really choose to throw it, whether that's because it hurts him or whatever. There's a lot of talk about that having some issue. Guys who don't want to throw sweepers a lot because they're 86 miles per hour and you're supinating, which you call so hard when you're turning over your hand when you throw it. That like just maybe it hurts. Maybe it doesn't feel great for him to throw it. Therefore, he's not going to throw it a lot. But anyways,
Right.
he has other tricks like bring the sinker up, the chop better. I like the slider shape. Like the curveball's really good. Dropped some value last year, but again, like there's this non-zero chance, but probably greater than like a 30-40% chance he gets back whatever was wrong with the cutter of the last 2 seasons, whether it's more finite location or whatever. And he's a better pitcher, and he was who he was in 22 and 23. And even if he's not, he was very good last year. Like I get the strike rate is going down. I get the cutter hasn't been as good. We're assuming that trajectory is going like completely flat down as you go over the next couple of years. And I don't think we're baking in the chance that he's back to 22, 23 Corbin Burnes. Appropriate.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think with Burnes, he's a guy like, sure, he's not that disgusting guy that we saw in 2021 when he won the Cy Young. What a ridiculous year that was, by the way. But no, this is a guy. He's such a workhorse, a guy that is gonna be just a steady guy. I mean, look how he just pitched in the postseason, for crying out loud. They couldn't score any runs, and his outing just gets completely forgotten about. In that wild card round there. This is a guy that I think, especially at least in the first few years of a deal, I think he would be very steady for you. I think he would end up being a better contract than David Price. David Price, there were kind of some issues with him and the media and whatnot. He was, the relationships off the field weren't going all that well with Price. He was running into issues with the postseason and whatnot. I think Burnes would end up being just a better contract if they were to take another chance. You think of teams out there, when I really think about the possibility of Corbin Burnes coming to the Red Sox, I think that also makes a lot of sense too, because when you think about the other teams out there that would be willing to give out a massive deal where they have the payroll flexibility, you think of the Dodgers, right? Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers can probably give up the money, but they got so much money tied up with pitching. Are they going to want to add another massive contract? You think about some other teams, possibly, the big markets, right? Maybe not the Yankees. Could they do something like that? The Angels, looks like they're trying to spend some money out there. What are some other teams that you think could be in the hunt for Corbin Burnes that could end up being? I think the Red Sox are a great fit. Do you see another team out there that could end up being like the Blue Jays also that could end up being a good fit for him?
I mean, I think the obvious fits that we've seen reported are the Orioles and Dodgers, which make a lot of sense, especially
Yeah.
after Burns sent that tweet out with the eye emoji after the Dodgers won the World Series, right? That was a little bit sketchy in my opinion. I was like, okay, like why would you send that out unless like you were curious about going there or something along those lines? Getting back into
That
conspiracy
too. I forgot about
here,
that.
so to speak. But those are my two fits. Like I don't the Angels going after Kikuchi to me signals that they didn't want to pay Burns. We'll see what the Blue Jays do. You know, that team I feel like has turned over a lot of staff, hasn't been too great on the pitching development side the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at these like potentially trade Vladdy circumstances. I just don't really know what where the Blue Jays are. I get they're in on Soto, but I think everyone would definitely ballpark them as the last of those 5 teams that have been
Yeah.
speculated to have already made offers. So I think Orioles and Dodgers make a lot of sense for Burns. But also want to point out, I made some content, I'm sure you have as well, where like everyone just says whatever pitcher you're talking about is going to the Dodgers, whether it be Sasaki, Bueller, Fried, etc. Burns. Like they can't have all these pitchers. Like it's just
Yeah.
not gonna happen. You know, like we're over calculating how many people they're actually gonna get. Yeah, I
Oh
think
my
it's
God.
realistic they get like a Sasaki and a Burns, but like they're not then gonna resign Bueller and resign Fried. It just doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
to me at all. So I
Yeah.
think we gotta like cool it on the Dodgers acquiring 7 of the
Oh,
7 relevant pitchers of this postseason
the
or postseason, offseason.
you just activated like some PTSD with me. Like I had one video where the amount of comments that I see, and I get it, I understand it, but the amount of
I get
comments,
it too, but
yeah, where they say there's no way Roki doesn't go to the Dodgers. It's like, come on, like I get it, but we gotta kind of also think about some other factors with Roki, right? He's very young. This is a guy that's not going to be getting a massive contract. Yamamoto was so different because obviously he was going to be getting big money. So Roki is not. He wants to go somewhere where he can just focus, at least I think, on the pitching side of things, focus on the development. He's 23 years old, and he's coming to a new country. I would imagine probably going to a team like the Dodgers. Sure, he could definitely go there. I don't, why not? Obviously, you got Otani, Yamamoto, but you'd have so much media hype there. You'd have so many other factors going on. I wouldn't say the Dodgers are a complete slam dunk. I would actually say the Padres can be just as competitive for someone like him. A smaller market compared to the Dodgers. I think less distractions. He'll still have the media there, but you still have a guy like Yu Darvish there. They've done pretty well when it comes to their development. There's so many. Anyway, we're getting away from the point, but Corbin Burnes, I saw. Thank you for bringing up the Orioles. I don't know why I just went blank on them.
no,
But the Orioles, absolutely. I mean, I definitely think he can go back there. I mean, they have the money for it. He just pitched very well there. I just wonder what he thinks. What's kind of the game plan, right, moving forward? Are they going to spend, to go out there and get some guys that can end up helping this great young core of players? I think the Mets too. The Mets were the team that I penciled them in for my offseason predictions. Obviously, they got the David Stearns connection. But yeah, when you think about teams, really, I would say the top 3 for me personally. I would say it would be the Orioles, Mets, and the Red Sox, and maybe the Dodgers can, if they want to step up and, pony up some money. But I think Burnes can end up being a realistic possibility. We'll see. But moving on from the rotation, let's touch on the bullpen real quick. Hey, the Red Sox, hey, we're talking about cutters a lot. Hey, they had Kenley Jansen. Guy used that cutter quite a bit. He's probably not coming back to the Red Sox at the end of the day. You also got Chris Martin. He's probably going to end up going elsewhere. The Reds, yes, they got Liam Hendricks. He's missed a lot of time, obviously. Hasn't pitched since 2023. But I think they need to add something to the back end of this bullpen, either as a guy that can close, or at least give you some flexibility there, either as insurance at the end of the day. I think they could also use a lefty. One guy that has been very popular in the Red Sox community when it comes to adding a reliever is someone like Tanner Scott. I look at the money that he's probably going to end up getting. I wonder if that's something that Craig Breslow would do. I feel like Craig Breslow and Chaim Bloom have a similarity where they look for the diamonds in the rough a little bit. He comes off to me as a guy that won't splurge on a guy like Scott, right? They just went and got Justin Wilson. And I see moves like that. I don't know. When you take a look at some relievers out there, who are some guys that maybe you think could be a good fit for the Red Sox? I know also one more, Jeff Hoffman has ties with Driveline Baseball. The Red Sox have been, connected there. Kyle Boddy, obviously. who are some relievers that you think would be good fits for the Red Sox?
Yeah, I kind of view this market like pretty top heavy, where you have Scott, Hoffman, probably like maybe 1A paired together, and then like the 1B tier, like the Chapman, Holmes, Trinan. You could throw David Robertson in there, but he's getting really old now. And then everybody else is kind of how I view it, right?
Yeah.
Where like I think you could run into a lot of variance when you're talking about 20 pitchers projected between point 0.3 and point 0.6 WAR. Like there's got all these guys mashed up in there, and it's a matter of like which one does your organization ID as both a monetary fit and also philosophy fit in terms of what you want to adjust with that individual guy. So I don't think I tend to believe that a lot of these teams that are more pressing on like the player development side don't like paying a four for 60 for a Tanner Scott, or a
Hmm.
3 for 45, whatever he's gonna get, $50 million a year, whatever it's projected. We'll see. But like that's aggressive. That feels to me like a move at an org that is good, but doesn't really have the chops in the minor leagues to churn out guys.
Hmm.
And I feel like you continually see this with teams like Dodgers, and even like the Mets have done, I think, a pretty good job of not giving out like massive contracts. And this last year, coming up with some relievers who I thought were relevant. The Dodgers do this continually, though. Every team in baseball wants to do what the Dodgers do, where you just pick up these random relievers and you turn them into studs, and then you get rid of them the
Yeah.
next year. And I struggle when Brezza was with the Cubs. They never did this. They did a great job with Julian Merriweather. Was another scrap heap guy projected for this 2.3 to 6 WAR I'm talking about, where it's just like I don't know if you could differentiate that and convince yourself a guy's healthy, then like go after a Jordan Romano or something along those lines. Get him for $6 million, and
Yeah.
like he was great in your guys' division for last 3 seasons prior to
Yeah.
this most recent year. We had some elbow problems. Then you run to the health side of that. So it's like I just think it's just a massive glob to me
Yeah.
outside of the top tier, where I
Yeah.
just don't think I would assume Breslow did not spend on any of the top 5-6 relievers. So then it's a matter of finding who here, like a Jose Leclerc, maybe, or something with the Rangers. He's been pretty good the last couple of years, walks a lot of guys, but generates a lot of strikeouts. I said Romano. I really liked how Finnegan, who was DFA'd, or excuse me, non-tendered by the Nationals, tweeted about him. I don't really understand why he was not tendered. Uh,
Yeah, that was a weird one.
there's some easy
That was
adjustments
definitely
that they can
something.
make here there with him. Jack up splitter. Yeah, exactly. So like there's a lot of moves here that I imagine an org like the Red Sox are looking at and keying in on a couple guys where it's like, we think we could capture really good value on these guys. Like we're not gonna pay Tanner Scott $60 million. Although I
Yeah.
love Tanner Scott, he's a very unique pitcher. I don't foresee an org doing that. So I could be wrong, but I don't think smart player development orgs tend to pay money to these kinds of top end relievers.
Yeah, and the way we're kind of reading things too, it seems like they're okay with investing deep into starting pitching, right? The bullpen, again, like it's kind of like they look for the diamonds, right? That's kind of how it's been for since Heim Bloom, right? And Justin Wilson was a perfect example. That's a guy where kind of lower that fastball usage, start working in the other pitches. He could end up being pretty decent. And he actually went on the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast. He said the Red Sox were going after him last offseason. So they had their eye on him for a little while. But, I agree. I think you're going to end up seeing, shoot for value. Maybe, I wonder if Jeff Hoffman could be a guy. He's interesting to me because, he has those ties, with Driveline. And, there have been some reports that maybe teams could be looking at him as a starting pitcher because he has a 4-pitch mix. And even though he was dominant as a reliever, he was working in 4 pitches, which is something you don't really see from relievers too much. I kind of wonder if Jeff Hoffman could be a guy on their radar. And could you see the Red Sox maybe doing something like that where they take a look at him and they see okay, Giants, they brought in Jordan Hicks, they made him a starter. Could you see any scenario where the Red Sox do something like that with Hoffman?
Yeah, I think I could. I made a video on this where I thought that he was a pretty strong candidate to start. There was a piece by Kylie McDaniel today about this very topic where I believe he talked to Jeff Hoffman and had some quotes that said if given the opportunity he'd like to start. So now you might run into situations where it's like, well, which organization is now giving him the opportunity to start? If he has a choice, then like I would imagine he maybe wants to go in that direction. And maybe he signs like a 1-in-1 where it's like he's
Yeah.
32, he'll be pitching in his age 32 season, right? So like, okay, age 32, he does a 1-in-1 with a player opt out. Give me a little less money. If I prove myself as a starter, I can go into the market at 33 and get, maybe a better contract than I would have been able to get otherwise.
Yeah.
So I do think that he might go to an odder team where the fit on the starter side makes more sense, where they
Mhm.
don't want to pay $17 million a year for an Eovaldi. or anyone in that window, Mania, whatever he gets, 15, 20 in that window. And they're like, okay, let's pay Jeff Hoffman $12 million a year for 2 years and give him an opt out in the middle and just try to grab some value. And I'm thinking more like smaller market here, maybe like a Rangers or someone along those lines where, they have some TV issues, so they're not flush with cash and they're not going to pay any of these top starters. So they go down to a guy that, if you project him out as a starter, I think would look pretty good based on what you're talking about again, of like the shapes look good, multiple pitches, command looks good, etc. And he was a starter. So his body's been at that workload of 150 innings before. And I do think that helps the guy return to levels he has been. So I think he lands as a starter somewhere, would be my prediction. But I bet it's in an unconventional spot. Diamondbacks, I'm trying to think like other random teams that kind of need starters but don't want to spend money and are willing to take shots on this. And he could also then be a trade candidate, right? Like he looks good as a starter for 4 months. That team's out of it. They ship him, almost like an Eric Fetty style situation where it's like, we'll try you as a starter, but we'll only give you a 1 year. We might trade you in the middle of it, and maybe you end up on a contender. But like maybe he just wants that chance to be a starter and end up on a contender. So I like Hoffman, but I think he's going to go to a weird spot. I don't really know where. I'll guess the Rangers, but we'll see.
He sort of feels almost like he's very good, but almost like an enigma at the same time, right? Because you don't know what, like kind of like Jordan Hicks. Like I don't think anyone saw the Jordan Hicks thing, turning out where he was going to be a starter. I think that threw everyone off. But I think that, really, that's set up guys for the future where if they want a chance to start, maybe there could end up being a chance. But we're going to circle back to kind of what we were talking about here in the beginning. And I did not highlight the bullpen arms. Darn it! Already goofing up over here.
I wasn't going to call you out, but I noticed.
I'm always so bad with the buttons, man. But let's circle back here. We started off with Juan Soto. Let's end with a guy that would not be Juan Soto. There's a lot of bats out there that are not named Juan Soto. Let's say the Red Sox. They end up putting in a valiant effort, end up not getting Soto. There's other bats out there. The one guy everyone thought coming into the offseason was Teoscar Hernandez, right? Teoscar Hernandez is a guy that's always hit well at Fenway Park. He's talked about how much he loves Fenway Park. I still think he would be a great bat. Even if the Red Sox signed Juan Soto, I know it might sound greedy, but I would still want them to go get Teoscar because I want that right-handed bat at Fenway Park. You got some other bats, right? You got Anthony Santander. We talked about, Willy Adames a little bit earlier. Maybe someone like Alex Bregman if they do the position change. What are some other bats out there that you would like to see the most if the Red Sox ended up not going the Juan Soto route?
I think one of the more interesting ones is Michael Conforto. I saw the Sisters Barbecue guys tweet him out and shouted him out just because like his stats were really good at the end of the year. He hit really well versus left-handed pitching, which he hadn't done in a really long time. He played like fine defense. Like he's not a great defender, but it's not really what you're acquiring him for. You're acquiring him probably for the OBP and some slug. Again, he's had some weird injury histories. I think he's a Boris guy. He kind of like was fun as a free agent and then went into hiding for like 2 to 3 years, it seemed, with these injuries and like playing in the West Coast on a Giants team that wasn't good. Yeah. But like I kind of think like he could be an interesting piece, and I think he'd probably come in a little cheaper. I don't know if I have a dollar projection from Fangraphs on him.
I think,
but he's the name that comes to mind for me. He's like a 1 for 12, 1 for 10 guy. That's like really cheap, as a lefty bat if they need a replacement. It's obviously not as exciting as Juan Soto, but it would allow you to do a lot more things outside of Juan Soto. I don't know. Do you really want to entertain Adames at third base? Like if the Yankees are going after that, what if the Red Sox went after it? Move Devers over to first. Like that's a fun idea. Again, it's a lot of money, but I think Conforto makes a lot of sense. I don't know if there's anyone else. Is there anyone else in the market that you're like he was brought up? Like Teoscar makes a ton of sense, but I also think a lot of teams are going to be on Teoscar because like I think they're going to believe this most recent sample where he got out of Seattle and shit.
Well, I think the consensus among Red Sox fans is the only lefty that they would be okay with bringing in is Juan Soto, right? Because Juan Soto, it doesn't matter if he's a lefty, because the Red Sox are very lefty heavy. Conforto, I definitely see where the advanced numbers, the advanced numbers, they were very good. I even had a couple of people comment saying when I talked about Conforto in a video not too long ago, they were like, "Oh wow, I didn't even know his number. The metrics were this good," and that was at a pitcher-friendly park. So. I can definitely see why he would be interesting. But I think the consensus really is the Red Sox are probably not going to be adding lefty bats unless it's Juan Soto because they really need to get righty heavy. Yoshida is a guy that's pretty popular to move and if they can eat some of the contract because he's really just a light hitting DH. at this point. He doesn't fit great with the Red Sox at this point. There's a lot of lefty bats in that lineup, and they need to
It was
figure out
not.
how to move some of these guys. You got Willy Abreu. He's been a popular trade candidate for possibly to be sent back in a Garrett Crochet trade, but now that it seems like the Red Sox are going a bit quiet on that front, that would have killed two birds with one stone, right? That would have killed, a few birds with one stone, right? If you were to somehow part with Abreu to get Crochet, you'd add top of the rotation stuff. You would subtract a left-handed hitter, But in the end, it is what it is. But the Red Sox are trying to get rid of lefties. Craig Breslow even talked about this in the beginning of the offseason, says they need a bit more balance in the lineup. Now, another guy I've thought about, we'll talk about Adames and Bregman here in a second, but another guy I've thought about maybe as like a fallback is someone like Jake Burger on the Marlins, right-handed bat. He'll bring you a good amount of power. Defensively, he's really a guy that if you move Yoshida, you could bring in as a DH from the right side, maybe play some first or whatever to give Casas a day off. But since I mentioned Casas, right, this has been a hot talking point. We have to be careful of this because people in Red Sox land they're going to get very grumpy if you suggest trading Tristan Casas. But I can understand not wanting to trade Tristan Casas. This guy has 40 home run potential, but he has come up as, Ken Rosenthal brought it up in the beginning of the offseason saying, Rafi, there could be a position change there where it's to help improve the defense. And he suggested moving him to first base, and then Casas could be used in a trade, maybe to help land some starting pitching. I'm on I'm on the side where I probably don't think we should get rid of Casas because there's so much upside with the bat there. I don't know. Where are you there? Where are you on Casas?
I just feel like it's trading at like not proper value. Like
Yeah.
I struggle sometimes with like it makes sense why these guys come up in trade situations because they're off injury. There's maybe a positional need to move them off the spot. This guy's slightly unproven, but he's what is he entering his age 25 season?
Yeah.
Like the barrel rate was fantastic the times he'd been on the field. He obviously was. He posted a similar barrel rate last year. Overall performance was maybe slightly ticked down in the 60 games he played or so.
Yeah.
I think it's a bad point to trade him from a value perspective. So I just wouldn't do it as an organization. I
Yeah,
would
I
I would wait
agree.
and
I
see what he
mean,
did this year, and then if your situation arises more, you can more aggressively shop and you probably get better value.
yeah, I think it's a terrible time to trade him. His value took a hit this past year because of the rib injury. He missed a lot of time with that. I don't agree. I think if you move Rafi off a third, I think DH is probably the way to go. But I kind of started thinking about it a little bit more. I think Willy Adames would be the guy I would want to bring in because, yes, Adames would be that guy you pencil in at third base for the most part. But Adames has very good versatility. Compared to someone like Bregman, Bregman can play some short, but that's not really a position he's been playing really at the major league level. Adames has been playing a lot of shortstop. He can probably play second base as well. I think for the Red Sox, I think the fit there makes a lot of sense because Cora loves versatility, right? He loves these guys that can move around and play in other spots. So I think with Adames, I still think you would see Rafi at third base a lot, right? Because obviously, lefty bat, I could see some of the matchups coming into play where, however they want to work a lineup on a certain day, you can have Rafi play some third. Adames can go play somewhere else, at second or whatever. They did not have great production at second base this past year. And when it comes to shortstop as well, Trevor Story is a huge question mark with the health, right? He's working out this offseason, looking pretty good. But Story, you don't know what's going to happen with him. If he goes down, well, Adames can slide right in. But I think you can also make the case too, where maybe if you want to manage Story's, innings a little bit, right, to, maybe try and work in some injury prevention, then Adames, he can go play some short. I think Adames is a great fit for the Red Sox. I know he had some issues against left-handed pitching this past year. That's something the Red Sox are also trying to get a little better at. But I think when you look at the trade-off, I think the versatility he provides, the insurance he can provide, I think he's a great fit out of all the bats besides Juan Soto and Teoscar. But what do you think of Adames, as a fit? Did I sell you on Willy Adames right there?
I'm a big Adames fan because of the versatility point. So I feel like unfortunately he's a fit for a lot of teams,
Yeah.
and I wonder how much that drives up the overall total value of like what he's going to get. He's projected for like 5 at, and we'll say like 27 to 30 million a year. Like that's a huge contract. So
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it makes sense that any of the teams that are in on Soto that don't get Soto and have a need in this spot go in this direction, which is why I brought up him with the Yankees a bit ago in the
Mm.
stream and stuff. I think he makes sense for the Red Sox as well. Like, I think he's a really good hitter. He's shown that extensively, and he plays a couple premium spots and plays them at an average to above average level. So I don't think I don't think his skills are gonna like hard fall off either over the next couple of years. So if you sign him
Mm.
for 5 years, like I think you probably got 3.5, maybe even 4 years of pretty good production there before you see some decline. Um, but I would love him at third base. I think the problem again is that there's a lot of teams that I think it logically makes a sense for a fit for, from the point that we brought up earlier, which is like third base is often a spot that's kind of shallow. And I mean, back to our point, not to go back to the outfield stuff, but like I had a hard time finding any other right-handed outfield bat that would fit the philosophy you're talking about of like trying to mitigate some of the lefty problems. Like Santander was pretty good each of the last 2 seasons facing lefty, and he could switch hit and stuff. So like,
Yeah.
okay, that makes some sense. But like again, it's a lefty bat. He's going to be batting lefty most of the time. So it's
Yeah.
really like Teoscar or nobody, right? Like it's
Yeah.
Teoscar, maybe Bregman. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Crawford box has definitely inflated his own run totals. Maybe he could just bang off the monster and come up with some doubles and post a similar slug to what he had in Houston and such. But um, yeah, righty outfield bats are not. That's not a particularly deep part of this market.
Yeah, and getting to say Oscar, I mean, yeah, he makes a lot of sense. I think you would have to move Yoshida at that point. I think you see, where you'd have an outfield. Yeah, Teoscar, he can go play out there, but I think defensively not amazing. So I think having DH open for that to have that flexibility there would be good, where he can DH on some days as well. I think Cora really wants to have a rotation there, where you can have Rafi DH on some days. You could have, Teoscar. I think that would be, and if we don't get Soto, which hey, I have already, said to myself, like, I will be very happy if the Red Sox get him, but I'm setting myself up to be. I'm setting my expectations low. So if we end up getting him, that's awesome, right? But I think there's a better chance the Red Sox could get Adames and Teoscar, get some pitching in there as well. That seems to be I think, the more realistic play. What do you think? At the end of the day, do you think the Red Sox probably attack different spots, or do you think they end up getting Soto and maybe add another guy? Where do you see the Red Sox going overall for this offseason?
I don't think they get Soto. I think he goes to the Mets. I'll stick by that prediction.
Mm.
I would imagine they end up. I'm going to say they pay for one of these starters. I'll go with Snell because I like him more than Free.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you've kind of convinced me on Teoscar. If they're like actually trying to rebalance the lineup there and get Roddy Pop, then he makes a lot of sense. And he's one of the only guys in the market right now that I can
Yeah.
see fitting that spot if you don't get a Soto type. So I think that's your haul, Snell and Teoscar. How would you feel if that's it?
If that ends up being it, maybe get a reliever, a couple of guys
A
in there. I think
reliever.
that's
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
I think, to me, two different dream off seasons. Soto, yeah, that's easily the top of the list right there. But if they had an off season where they got Adames, Teoscar, Snell, I think that's a heck of an off season. If you could land all three, if you could get Teoscar and Snell or Adames and Snell, I mean, that's a great off season too. Either way, it's nice to see the Red Sox in the news. It's nice to see them, it seems like they're really stepping it up for this offseason. And then you got all these other young guys coming up too. We haven't even talked about the young guys as well. Before we wrap things up here, let me ask you, out of the guys that the Red Sox got, the big four, right? You got Roman Anthony, you got Christian Campbell, you got Marcelo Meyer, right? You got Kyle Teal. Which one of those guys, I'm not sure how much you've looked into them, but out of those four, which one do you intrigues you the most?
Yeah, Christian Campbell's the one I think I like the most.
Mm,
Maybe that's a little bit counterintuitive based on what other people have said. I know Roman Anthony's probably graded out the highest.
yeah.
But Campbell, from a data standpoint, looks really strong. I know there's probably a little more variance there, but I generally like those higher variance guys because
Mhm.
if they hit, you know, 70th, 80th percentile outcome, you're running into like a perennial all-star.
Mhm.
I did a video where I dug into some like batted ball data from the minor leagues, which isn't really publicly available, but I got my and Christian Campbell really popped on statistics. You just look at like an expo on contact, which is a pretty good predictive metric on how hard you're hitting the ball and what angles you're hitting it at. He was really, really high up there and top 5, 6, I think, in all of minor league baseball. Like 500 plus guys. From the swing and chase there isn't as strong as don't use a little more polished of an approach, but But I think he just makes a lot of sense generally as a guy that could run into a pretty good amount of pop and play a couple spots in the infield. I like Tito a lot too. I have a bunch of catching right now. Pop in the prospect space, he makes sense from a pure bet on ball. Behind the play, seems to grips up pretty well as well. And I think those catcher types are perennially undervalued out of
Yeah, no, I
scouting,
think
like statistics side. We're trying to project these guys out.
yeah, no, we're getting to Campbell. I'm very excited about Christian Campbell. I don't know if this is a good comp here. I see almost like a bigger Mookie Betts a little bit. You know, a guy that's just got explosive hands in the zone. You know, I think you see some power there, but I think you could even add some more down the road. A guy that has versatility. I'm not sure if that's been a comp that's out there or not. I don't know why. It kind of gives me those vibes. Would you say that's a good comp, or do you think there's a better comp for Christian Campbell out there?
Oh man,
I don't know.
I don't
I'd
know
have
if
to
I have
think
it off the
about
top
it.
of my head. I tend to stay away from like I'm like the most boring comp person ever. I'm a super boring comp person where
Well,
I like
usually the
never go
comps
towards
are
really good players. I
yeah.
always comp to
Usually when
like
comps,
your
they're not.
completely average player, and it's like, oh, that's who you think he is. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why. He just kind of gives me that. I don't know why. He just gives me that vibe a little bit, right? Just I think it's just because of the bat speed, right? I just
I
almost
guess
see
you, I guess you.
like a bigger Mookie, if that makes sense. I don't know. Probably not. Anyway, either way, I'm excited about the guy. He has I think also getting back to the versatility thing. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Campbell come up this year and contribute in a big way. I know Vaughn Grissom, that's the guy they brought in for Chris Sale. Obviously, it was a lost season for him. I think they'll give him a chance, but I would not be surprised at all if we saw kind of like something when, back, 10 years ago or so when Jackie Bradley Jr. ended up winning a spot on the opening day roster. I could see Christian Campbell maybe turning some heads in spring training and possibly winning a spot on the team. I wouldn't be surprised. I could even say Roman Anthony possibly too. We'll see. But everyone, I think we're going to wrap it up there. We talked a lot tonight. We had a lot of coverage here tonight. We talked about a lot of different things. We basically broke down the whole team and, all of the offseason needs. But Lance, I want to thank you, man. I want to thank you for coming on here tonight. It's been a pleasure. Tell everyone at home, where are you? Where can they find you? What do you got going on? What's going on?
Yeah, check out my YouTube channel. I mean, I'm on here definitely trying to promote that a little bit and pump it. So if you like what I talked about here and how I frame things, then check it out. Usually do like a video a week, pretty more in-depth stuff, talking about like individual players or league trends and stuff. I feel like it'll keep you pretty up to date with what a lot of the nerds are thinking in terms of data and how teams are approaching development, et cetera. So that's kind of like the niche I try to exist in. So Robbie's got a great pair of channels here now going. So I hope I can supplement and make be like the cherry on top. Like you get the nuts and bolts from Robbie, and then you come over and you're like, you want to learn about like organizational philosophies on the pitching side between orgs, and you're interested in what the Red Sox do. Like I could talk about that. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to say it. I think I can I give you I don't know, a bit more of the broad, kind of base level kind of stuff. A little deeper than just ERA and stuff like that. I think I can get a little deep.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
You definitely, yeah, you definitely go way deeper than me. And I would love to be able to do that, but I don't have the intelligence to be able to do that, unfortunately. But that's where guys like you come in. You do a great job. So thank you for that, and thank you for all you do, because I think it's important to have guys like you out there where you kind of, it helps understand what front offices think a bit more. I think that's something that's lagging in the game, but I do see an effort out there to get better. Not even just on the player development side of things. I think front office too, when you look at value and everything, how teams, you go back to the Moneyball movie. Yes, obviously, Miguel Tejada never existed. Barry Zito, Tim Hudson never existed in that movie, unfortunately. But, they say the one phrase, they don't buy players, they buy wins. I think that's something that I think people kind of need to focus on a little bit more, where that's kind of how front offices think, not just from a player development side of things, but also from an economical side of things. But, you do a great job with what you do, man. So thank you for all you do. But everyone, we're going to wrap it up. Yeah, man. We're going to wrap it up here tonight, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you're kind of on the way out, hit that like button. Go subscribe to his channel. I put the link in the description down below, or I put it in the chat, sorry. I'll also put it in the description for those of you that want to go over there. Great stuff, man. But everyone, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.